Hello, friends and extended family. I am continuing with my morning routine during the week, whereas during my morning bath time and rest time, I avoid social media and continue to read. Um, Social media was starting to become a bit starting to manifest as active addiction, and I'm aware of my addictive um, issues, so I try to monitor them. And then when I discover there is addiction, I try to open up space within that to slowly um, mitigate the effects, mitigate the addictive, the drive towards it. But anyway, so right now I'm reading Simulations and or Simulacrum and Simulacra and Simulations by John Baudrillard, and it's a very I mean it's only about 150 pages, and I'm nearly done. And it is kind of it's sort of one of the inspirations for the movie The Matrix, and it's also sort of part of the allure and whatnot into this social justice movement, but it's not. It's being corrupted, sort of in its essence. It does have a philosophy very consistent with, again, with Plato's cave, and I feel that it also offers adoptees um, some ideology to help them better objectify the adoption experience that they've undergone. That being said, um, it's about it's about getting at the truth, um, and yeah, it's heavy lifting. It really is. Like a lot of the vocabulary is beyond me. I grew up very lay in less than blue collar um, surroundings, and unfortunately, you lose a lot of your academic technical vocabulary you may picked up in school when you're not utilizing it. Just like I took French immersion to really no purpose because English is the dominant language here. And ultimately, I think what it is it's a good exercise in trying to understand ourselves, understand our beliefs, our mental conditioning, um, helping get to who we are versus who we've been trained to be. And I think that ties in especially well for adoptees because we were taken from our natural environment via sort of a meta ideology that we could bypass nature and substitute parents um, and I guess the big problem is with that is that there's always two ways of thinking about it. So, are we doing it? And this is what we're led to believe. We're doing it for humanitarian reasons, that if we didn't, these babies would just, die and would live miserable, horrible lives, and that's just the way it is and the way it would be. But it's again one of those chicken and egg scenarios, because if there was no institution of adoption, then would mothers abandon their children in droves, or abort them in higher numbers? I think if adoption disappeared tomorrow, everything else stays the same. I think abortion would increase incredibly in number. But that being said, I think the attitude around children would swing back the other way, whereas mothers would come to would evolve back into a situation where the role of mother is important, and the role of mother is valued, and the role of mother is becomes again a protected class. Um, as much as we want to pretend that women were oppressed all through these ages, uh, many were given an opportunity in a loving marriage and home to pursue her own interests, pursue her own education, uh, and again, you know, I don't think of education as you paying for someone to indoctrinate you. There's a library. Anyone who can read can educate themselves to some degree. Now, given it's much better to try and find someone who is able to guide and shape someone's education, who has already come to some sort of mastery of life, morality, um, ways of being healthy, etc., so that we can move forward quicker. But at the same end of things, if someone wants the knowledge and the wisdom, seek and ye shall find. It's a promise and it's a truth. Um, you know, anyone could debunk that truth with bad faith argument, just by saying, I went and looked for something and I couldn't find it, so you're wrong. That's how bad faith works. I don't think any of the things I'm telling you or trying to share with you are for my profit, really. I'm telling you things that people can easily attack me for. All I'm doing is trying to share information that I feel is important and that your attention may be directed away from, so that your thoughts and drives will not lead you towards independence, sovereignty, freedom, and potentially some sort of relationship with higher senses, higher thinking, and higher powers. So I know some may feel like that's veiled propaganda towards religion, but I don't belong to any religion. I've never been initiated into religion, but I have dabbled and researched within many religions, and within those areas, and giving myself the permission to pass from one to the other, whether it be Christianity, Satanism, esotericism, mysticism, Buddhism, Hinduism, etc. I've got a Quran sitting that I've started. It's heavy lifting again, and I plan on reading that as well. But it's information. It's ideas, and there is a diversity of ideas, just like Marxism, a diversity of ideas. And to be perfectly frank, um, I could probably, if I so chose, find scenarios whereas potentially communism might be appropriate to extricate the world back into some sort of balance. But the problem with some ideologies is that they are based upon things like this. A group of people get together and decide that the general populace is too stupid to consent to their own well-being, and that given freedom of choice as gifted by divine powers, that if given freedom of choice, that they would wreck everything, wreck themselves, and make the world a miserable place. Fair enough. I can see that as partial reality. But there's a chicken and the egg scenario there as well. That these same people would go about trying to prove this. And in doing so, they use high-handed psychological warfare to dupe people into poisoning themselves, into wasting their time, into disease and dishealth, etc. And that's all very, very. It's all very scary. I mean, that's what it is. This stuff is scary stuff, and it's easier to just go with the flow and try not to attract the wrong kind of attention, and hope that nobody notices that even though you're going along, you don't feel like this is right. And I think the proof of that happening in our world is fairly obvious, that uh, our animal bodies are so distressed and anxious and in some cases delusional, delirious, all sorts of bad cases are being drugged, right? That people are going into doctors' offices completely distressed and they're being drugged. And the more distressed they are, the heavier handed drugs they're using, putting people on, things that are making them into vegetables, slobbering and just to keep the physiology from freaking out. And I cite J. Krishnamurti when he said that, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm horrible with quotes. It's no sign of health to be well adjusted to inherently sick society, right? And that's not to say that democracy and what we've got going on in the West is a sick society in its infancy and ideology. It's the basic truth that over time, something that starts out quite pure, like a little baby, succumbs to the outside forces that infuse entropy. So, all these things being said, the Simulacra and Simulations book does help point to a sort of simulation, a second order sort of simulation, whereas you know, natural is you're born to your mom and dad, and they raise you, and you are initiated into that family structure of your ancestry, and all that has supposedly come down genetically, biologically, and all, mentally, spiritually, it all kinds of comes together as a fulcrum with your perspective. And you are outfitted with the things you need to move forward in life by these peoples. But instead of that, they take you and put you in a different scenario. Now, we pretend that that's for humanitarian purposes. But what's the other option? Why else would anyone do that? Okay. Well, the reason why someone might want to do that is because if you take it from these people here who have wisdom, understanding, sovereignty, freedom, and those sort of values, and a faith, religion, a way of living that will keep them healthy, keep them from bondage, keep them from addiction, keep them from, unplanned pregnancies, all sorts of those things, those morals that are designed to help keep that body safe and keep it functional within that family, if it's a functional family, of course. If you take that child and you pick a different family, well, if you study behavioral psychology and you study, these sorts of things, well, you can understand childhood psychological development. And if you hit all those points and you corrupt them, create traumas at those points, well, then you can completely corrupt that physiology to make it into a consuming machine, lack of faith, full of fear, anger, confusion, etc. Right? So, in the war for souls, if you look at it spiritually, well, then you could imagine that the two forces upon earth, aware of this war, would want, if adoption, slavery, etc., come to be, would want to convert babies from the training of one group of people to the training of another group of people. So, growing up in my scenario, everything seemed very backwards. We didn't support each other; we tore each other down. That was the game. We weren't our. I mean, I find it hard to include we in this because I was sort of a unwilling participant. Living with the enemy, kind of, so to speak. And unfortunately, these people were slaves because they didn't have faith. They didn't have the discernment and things like that. They just faked everything. And if they wanted to feel better about themselves, they tore someone else down. At least I'm not as bad as them. And that game goes on in an ever descending spiral, and it ends in misery and addiction and loneliness and dysfunction and anger, resentment. It ends in those negative places. So I guess what I'm saying is, I mean, the scenarios can always be reversed. You can look at it from different things, but I guess the key is that you are the sort of fulcrum and you are the decider. You decide what is right and wrong. And unfortunately, little children have to go along to get along. But at the end of the day, the choice will come back to you. And at a certain point in life, we can always repent and say, no, this, I don't vote for this, I don't consent to this, and I don't think this is good for human children or human beings. And it's the ability to discuss these things and the ability to have open debate that is going to help improve the circumstances of children and consciousnesses, and have them not being tortured and whatnot, and help them move in a positive direction in sort of this struggle of stagnation, you know, being tousled kind of back and forth between opposing scenarios. I mean, I drank my way through it. I medicated my way through life because it was painful and it was confusion and chaos. I mean, nothing made real sense. And it really wasn't until I finally sobered up and went through the 12-step process and alleviated some of my own guilt and pain, and made some decisions about who I wanted to be, who I still was, and how I had gotten off track. And I guess that goes to the citation of, isn't it an unexamined life worth living? And, when I think back to my old attitude, it was simply that, life was too hard for me. And I had sort of assigned myself as, I will be the wine drinking guy that is kind of cynical and try to just be there for people when they hit the sort of fringe experiences that I was more familiar with, and other people, I sort of saw myself as sort of a guardian of the innocent in these realms of narcissism and things like that, because I did have enough intellect to see sometimes when other people were being abused, um, but being abused was sort of my natural state. So I would drink myself to the point of stupidity, whereas I could be easily abused. And I repeated the pattern throughout my life, just like I did with smoking cigarettes, pumping toxins into my lungs, alcoholism, toxins into my stomach, um, and it's pretty hard to wake up to that, to find that you've been trained to destroy yourself and cause yourself misery, and to find that you're going to have to reach out for help in a world that seems so hostile. And anyways, that's the difficult scenario we have. And so to sum up, the book Simulacra and Simulations is a good read, and don't feel bad if you can't, if the average person is not going to understand all the vocabulary and be able to ingest it in one go and really just understand it perfectly. But it does sort of chip away at some of our psychological sort of boundaries and limitations, and does provide a bit of a stretch in our consciousness to sort of consider adoption from a different angle, to get sort of a more objective view of it that maybe we're not seeing. And in doing so, you may at the very end, come to see that you now have a choice to make. You've gone through the experiment. Was adoption real? Or when you look at natural families and you imagine that sort of scenario, would that have been more real? Or if you meet your birth family and establish, like I did, that this would have been the place I needed to be, to maximize my health, uh, and maximize my physiology and to maximize growth in all areas. So anyways, hopefully that gives you some things to think about out there. And I'd love to hear of other people who have come up with interesting little, oh, things about adoption that I still haven't encountered or uncovered. Um, it's I've lost a lot through the adoption experiment, but I have gained experience in a incredibly complex experiment between nature and nurture, and I can participate with the data that I've gathered and know intimately about my own self. And each adoptee can do that and discover that, from there, they have a vantage point that's quite unique and that they can start doing their research on their own, uh, you know, what they've become and what is available for the adoptee who comes to more self-awareness and more self-realization about what the experiment has done for them and what advantages and flaws differ from the average natural person, and how maybe we can take advantage of that for ourselves to help us be more happy, more productive, and find more purpose in larger society and the world as a whole. So anyways, I'll leave it at that today, and I'm not sure if I really got my point across because, like I said, it's a highly complex subject, and I don't have full mastery or grasp of it myself. I'm working on it, and I just find it incredibly interesting, and I want to expand on those things with those of you who do want to expand on those things with me. All right.